Good morning, once again from Indian Mound Baptist Church. We got some bad weather coming through today, but I know that y'all are all safely at home and waiting the word of the Lord through this video process. Got a couple of things I want to tell you. One, I think that we may be able to get back together in the worship center in the next couple of weeks. We're going to do a whole lot of sanitizing and cleaning and following the governor's guidelines about social distancing. I believe we can all be here and enjoy fellowship again and enjoy encouraging one another in a couple of weeks. Right now, we're still, waiting for the governor to really give us permission to get back inside. So that's what we're waiting on. And we'll be getting this information out through the email, just things that we're going to ask you to do for us so we can gather together safely in God's house. We're probably going to do that in phases, start off with our worship time and then work in our Sunday school as soon as we can find out what we've got to do to be able to meet in our Sunday school classes. And since this is Mother's Day weekend, I wanted to honor our mothers. If we were having normal services, of course, we'd have a special presentation in the middle in the beginning of the service today. But allow me just to give you some encouragement and some thankfulness through some poems for our mothers and all the significant ladies in our lives. The first one is entitled Mom. I want to thank you for being in my life. I know that I can count on you in difficult moments. I know that with you I can share my joys. I know that our friendship is sustained by mutual love. That you are my mom and my friend is the most precious treasure that I will thank God for eternally. Thank you for filling my life with such happiness. I love you, Mama. I know many moms love to hear those words from their children. The other one is entitled My Great Love. Both of these poems are anonymous, but I thought they were just so appropriate to share our love for all the ladies and mothers in our church. The greatest love of my life, the most sincere love of my life, the most delicate love of my life, it is the love that never withers like yours, my mother. It is bigger because it is never forgotten, the most sincere because it is the only true one, the most delicate because it is scratched and hurt, your love, my mother. Is the love that would never forget. I would not forget it because it would not allow me to forget my life. But I couldn't forget thanks to that word, so simple. Love. Yes, love from my mother. Today, we're going to explore the love one another just one more time because I got to thinking about it. Where did this come from? This, love one another, a kind of mark of true Christians and Christianity. Well, it comes right out of some words Jesus spoke to his disciples. It's been called the 11th commandment, and it comes to us from John 13. Beginning in 31, therefore, when he had gone out, Jesus said, that was Judas had gone out, now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and will glorify him immediately. Little children, I am with you a little while longer. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. And by this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. Mike Jeffries, a Texas pastor, tells about coming home from a trip to find taped to his office door one of the most touching letters he'd ever received. It started out, Hi, Pastor, I love you. Very, 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 very much. Over 20 times. Signed, Love, Jenny. He said this was one of the most beautiful letters he'd ever gotten. You know, love is important because it is rooted in the nature of God. This world would not even have any understanding or comprehension of the virtue of love if God had not placed it within the heart of man at creation. A.E. Brooke, a New Testament scholar, said that human love is a reflection of something in divine nature itself. To love like Jesus, we must love in such a way that it cannot be denied. It must be expressed. In other words, love is an emotion, but more importantly, love is an action. The world looks at us for a sign of Jesus. He said that all men would know that we are his disciples because we love one another. When we live our life in submission to God, it is not rules that compel us to be kind, gracious, loving, responsible, truthful, supportive, and comforting. It is the love of God that works in our lives. Again, like I said last week, as I use this word love, I'm speaking of the agape love of the Scriptures. Because agape is the very love of God towards man. It comes from him, not man. Agape is always self-giving. It is one of the gifts of the Spirit. It is one of the fruits of the Spirit. He said, love one another as I have loved you. And when you look at his group of men and followers, not just the disciples, but if you look at all of them, it is very clear to me that his love for them was undeniable, was unselfish, and was unconditional. Real love, true love, begins in our hearts and moves to our hands, moves into our lips and our eyes. I believe Paul must have been thinking about this when he gave us the description of agape love, I believe. One thing I might point out, John said God is love. And in this scripture here, I believe Paul was very much thinking about God, God in his presence, but in his manifestation too. So, in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, very familiar passage, we have an explanation of what the love one another looks like, what it is, what it means. He says, love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly, does not seek its own, is not provoked, but rejoices with the truth, hears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never fails, but if there are gifts of prophecy, they will be done away. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there is knowledge, it will be done away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away. As I said last week, love changes everything in our relationships, not only with each other, but with the Lord. When we love as Jesus told us to love, as he commanded it, then the world will know not only of our love for him, but of our love for each other, for our fellow man. Paul has given us a little bit over 15 characteristics. I'm not going to cover all of them. I think you're very familiar with them, but it's interesting that the first two are really the only two stated positive descriptions or traits of love, and then the rest of them are stated in the negative. Does not, does not, does not. I think Paul really did that more for emphasis and for contrast than he did for anything else. But I want to talk about some of these today, because if we have some of them, we're doing a lot better than if we had none of them. He starts off with this description: love is patient. The Greek word for patient is actually two words. It actually means long suffering or long movement, long in restraint. The thing is, it's a very directional word. It's a very much positional word. People know when you are impatient with them as well as they know when you're patient with them. This definition, as I understand it from Paul, is not anywhere near we're condoning evil acts, evil words, immoral acts. Like I told you last week, the world's use of the word love is totally different from Scripture. But what it does go to is the idea of when you love with patience, you love with restraint. You don't want your way or have to have your way with everything, with another person. And then he goes on to say, love is kind. Another meaning for the Greek word there is gracious or useful. It indicates or it hints at an act of doing good, doing service for another. Origen, in his commentary on 1 Corinthians, described this word as sweet to all. Jesus told us to love our enemies as we love our friends. And I'll be the first one to tell you that's very demanding, very sometimes difficult. But I do believe that one of the virtues that is missing in this world today is the act of kindness.